a stand, take a stand. Everybody, come take my hand.
Playoffs are a little over a week away. What does that mean? Well, for Brian Murray, he'll have one more week to field questions from the Ottawa media about his job. That also means there's one more week left for Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment to try and pry a little bit more money out of their fans and to try to get them to pay for playoff tickets that, hey, Leafs aren't going to the playoffs, so they don't need them. One more week for Ilya Kovalchuk to get ready for his real season at the World Hockey Championships in May. Ken, what do you think about that? What do you think about guys who just die for playing in the World Hockey Championships like Ilya Kovalchuk?
Well, you know, it's a tough sale when you're pulling someone out of Russia coming into North America. They're living and dying, you know, the Russian flag. So at the end of the day, they're going to be living in Russia. You know, he'll be living in Russia when he retires. So I think the Stanley Cup is one medal.
$100 million. They gave him $100 million. Isn't that enough reason to say, well, you can kind of give up on Russia?
You know what? At this point, he's got so much money. I really don't think he gives a shit about money. So now the reality is going back to Russia to win a medal where he's got to spend the rest of his life. It's crazy. I've seen it. You see guys like that kind of go through the season, and you wonder how they still have juice left and they can go fire up and win for the country at home.
He doesn't care about money. Well, then why would he hold out for $100 million?
He's got a good agent.
Who is his agent, by the way?
I don't know. He's a smart man, I tell you that much. Probably a bank robber.
Hey, he deserves. You think he wears one of those little glasses like that? Does he drive away in a getaway vehicle?
A little bandito mask. I bet you's got one of those on when he walked in.
Yeah, all right. Let's move right on to it. Since we're talking about the playoffs, nobody fights in the playoffs. So why do we need fighting in hockey in general if there's no fighting in the playoffs?
Well, for anyone who actually watches the playoffs, I don't know if anyone's noticed the intensity level gets ramped up a couple degrees. When it becomes in playoffs, it's game on. The gladiator, the guys used to say it's time to put the women and children to bed and go get dinner. And that's exactly what happens. Guys buckle up. I mean, guys are taking high sticks. Guys are battling through it. And it's a whole new season. And guys dig in.
I'm not going to lie, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's all right.
So tell me, why is it that if there's – you use the term release valve all the time, right? If there's no fighting in the playoffs, then doesn't that show that maybe there isn't such thing as a release valve in hockey?
There's no time for fights in playoffs. The game is so intense. The adrenaline is so high that you pretty much got 4 lines that are banging and rolling. During the season, you're running with 3 lines, 2.5 lines. So the 4th line's sitting on the bench, and the guy's losing his mind. He's got to burn his energy out somehow, and that's what happens in the game. But when you're in the playoffs, you got 4 lines of momentum rolling forward. The emotion's high. Both teams, everybody's playing, and the adrenaline takes over to big hits and back checks and forechecks, and that's a different game.
Am I the only one who thinks that maybe if in the regular season they had that going on, that hockey would be a lot better in the regular season?
You can't play that intense for the whole regular season. Regular season is one season in itself, but when you're playing for the Stanley Cup, when you're playing for the ultimate trophy, the best trophy in the world, guys do whatever it takes.
Okay, Joe Thornton, 999 career points. He might, by the time this airs, he might have 1,000. But tell me, how many of those points were they assists on goals by you, standing at the side of the net, tapping them in?
3 to 5 for sure, and those were big ones. Those were the real comp. He was in a real deep slump, and so I really helped him over that by burying the pucks when he passed them to me.
You pulled him out of that slump, eh?
I really helped him through it.
All right, well, Joe Thornton's known to slump in the playoffs, so what advice do you have for him then?
Well, if the Sharks are smart, they may give me a call, bring me in for a few weeks, maybe set the tone, but you know what? They've been through it before.
They already tried that with an old guy. It was Claude Lemieux, and it didn't go so good for him.
They did, but Claude and Joe don't have nothing in common.
Yeah, you're right. Let's move on. I want to ask you about what are the Habs thinking right now. It looks like they might end up playing the Bruins in the first round. It's quite obvious that they're pretty scared of them. What's it like being a player on a team? I know you wouldn't be scared of them, but what would it be like being a player on a team that's really just scared shitless of another team?
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth. When we're going to the playoffs here, I really don't think the fear is not really a factor. The intimidation is not a factor. You're going to get your small guys running and gunning, but the reality is the Bruins are a much larger team. Ultimately, they're going to, dominate because of their size. But I wouldn't, I'm not going to hold it past Montreal to back down to look like they're a feared team. I mean, that last game going into Montreal, it was a 7-0 game. But I can tell you right now, if they're playing the playoffs, they won't be 7-0 games. They'll be, 1 or 2 goal games, both ways back and forth. You're going to get all little Montreal small guys flying around, buzzing, and, maybe get the edge on some of the bigger players.
But don't you think that after that 7-0 loss, don't you think that that's going to make them question their ability?
No, I think it's going to make them have to take a look in the mirror because now, stepping into the game, they're going to have to dig in. They know that they got embarrassed. They know that Bruins have capability.
Guys, there's not a lot of guys on that team that are willing to fight, but 2 of the guys that may have to scrap are Travis Moen because he's done it before and Hal Gill because of his size. What do you think it's like for those 2 guys in the locker room before a series? How does it not get in the way of their game?
Well, I think the trainer's got a better chance of getting in a fight than Hal Gill. So, what's
you
going
got it in
for
for
Travis?
Hal Gill, don't you?
I just speak the truth. What's going in for?
Why?
Why?
Yeah, what's wrong with Hal Gill?
Hal's a big, lovable man. He's a big, lovable man. That's as far as we'll go.
All right.
He's a great man. He's a great family guy. Sometimes he checks his balls in before he goes out on the ice, but hey, he's still playing, right?
I watched him in Toronto for a little over a season, and I don't think he threw one body check the entire time he was here.
So the reality is you got Travis Moen going in, but it's playoffs. Honestly, these guys are going in. They're buckling down. There's no fear. There's no intimidation factor in the playoffs. I'm telling you right now.
Okay, let's talk about visors. It seems like every couple of months someone gets hit in the eye. Maybe not as bad as Manny Malhotra got it a few weeks ago, and he might lose his vision forever. He may never see out of his eye again. So why is it still, in 2011, we're still talking about players putting on visors?
Well, it's the catch-22. I've seen guys with visors get stuck underneath it and do more damage. I've seen guys without visors where the stick glides straight up in front of the shield, doesn't touch. Where I've seen guys with visors where the stick comes up, gets hooked underneath the visor, and cuts a guy. So you've got both. You've got both sides of the pendulum. It's really up to the player. Is it safe for kids? There's no question. The safety should be the biggest part of the game. But when you're at the professional level, the visor is an optional choice to where you think you're most safe.
But you can't possibly make the argument that without a visor you're more safe.
Well, I've seen guys run into guys with who have visors on and actually cut their nose from the visor.
Okay, so you cut your nose, big deal. You get a lot more chances with your nose than you do with your eyes. You get one chance, and as soon as you mess that up, you're done. And Manny Malhotra, do you think that if you went back a couple weeks before it happened and said, Manny, you're going to suffer a serious eye injury that might put your career in jeopardy, will you put on a visor? What do you think he would say?
No, I mean, someone would have said that when he started playing junior hockey. I mean, you're a professional hockey player. You accept those risks. So, no, I mean, you could potentially, absolutely, you could potentially break your neck. I mean, so you're going to quit playing hockey? I mean, that's the risk of the game. That's a reality that players have to face day in and day out of playing the game.
Okay, why is it such a macho thing? And why is it so against the code for guys to wear visors?
Well, I mean, depends on what role you play, right? If you're going to hide behind your shield, it's protecting yourself. And then, the reality is you got guys in the past, not so much no more because guys are becoming a little more, visor friendly. But, in the past, if a guy wore a visor, he'd be the guy potentially running around sticking a guy and using the visor as a shield. So,
okay, fine.
Upon that.
So, isn't that more the problem of the instigator rule? It says you can't just grab that guy and beat the crap out of him?
Yeah, the instigator rule, I tell you, it's ruining the game. The instigator rule is delivering what research and technology want from concussions. They're getting tons of them. They got tons of research.
All right. Well, before we move on, could you have done your job with a visor on?
Absolutely not.
You couldn't have just taken off your helmet to drop the gloves?
And then if I fall on the ice and hit my head? So then we're getting into the taking off the helmet issue, which Gillen does all the time.
And what do you think about that?
He's doing what he's got to do because he wears a visor. That's a downfall to wearing a visor. That
Okay,
when
but what do you
get in
think
a fight,
about a
you gotta
guy
take your helmet off.
But doesn't that say that it still can be done? As stupid as it is to take off your helmet on the ice, doesn't it just say, well, it still can be done?
You have a bigger chance of getting a head injury during a fight than you do a stick during a game.
How many times did you get a high stick throughout your career? Just estimate.
I got stuck probably 3 times.
That's it. The entire time you played hockey, you only got 3 high sticks?
3.
Well, that's probably lower than most players. But how many times did you get it up around here? How many times did you get it up around here or here, somewhere in the eye area?
I've got a couple across the face.
Doesn't that scare you?
You know, it happens so quick. It's no big deal. Nothing like a nice ice pack and cold Bud Light doesn't help.
Well, we don't have any sponsors on this show, so maybe that's a call for one. Okay. Before we end this, I want to ask you, why do you hate the media so much? Why you got to be a jerk to them?
Well, the media has a place for itself. In the locker room, definitely is not a place for itself. Probably about 8-9 years ago, the media become all access to guys are just changing gear and down. All of a sudden, we've got, obviously it's an equal opportunity world, so we've got media of all types. We've got women and men now strolling around the dressing room. And I just find that most of them don't know what they're talking about, and they just hinder the game. They send wrong messages out.
What about me? Do I understand? Do I know what's going on?
I think you have a good mentor, so I think that's just what's giving you the guidance.
Hey, who's my mentor?
Who's your mentor?
Yeah, who's my mentor?
Your mom.
Well, she's a tough woman, so that's why I'm a tough guy. My dad's not the tough guy in the family.
I know that. When you told me that the other day, I was very impressed, and I really look up to your mom now.
So, last week you said you hate it when guys in the media refer to games as meaningless games. And after I did some thinking, I kind of agree with what you had to say. What are some other terms like meaningless games that the media throws around that you hate?
Well, I mean, obviously, meaningless games is the biggest one. Or, when they try and talk about cheap shots of the game. Or the biggest incident was the Chara one. They tried to blow that story up so big to sell so many newspapers. They were running in Sunday night with reports.
That was not the North American media. That was the French media in Montreal trying to influence the league into suspensions and kicking Chara out of the game.
They're all part of the same family.
Media. It's a little bit different because the French media in Montreal has been known to be a one-sided, very, very biased source. And I don't think you can say that about the rest of the media in the world.
Well, yeah, Toronto media, I mean, you're got your couple good beat reporters, but the reality is, too, I can guarantee any story, half of what you hear is not true, half of what you hear is true. So it's all made up. I've just lived it and seen it, and half of it's crap. And so there's room for it to report for the fans. The fans deserve to know what's happening, but they deserve to know the truth what's happening. And a lot of times they can't know the truth what's happening.
Okay, what about when you were in Boston? The media was really hard on Joe Thornton. You think it kind of had slowed down his development a bit?
No, the management slowed Joe's development down in Boston. They just didn't see eye to eye, and so there was major conflicts on how he was playing, how much he was playing, and there was some there was pressure back and forth, and I know that's ultimately why he got traded. It was his choice.
How did the media slow his development? How did the team in general slow his development? What did they do that was so bad?
Well, there's conflict with management, with GMs. I know that there was major conflicts. It was personality conflicts, probably more than anything, which led to a trade.
Any names you want to report?
Well, who was the GMs back in '90 when he got traded?
Is it Mike's? Was it O'Connell or Sullivan?
Well, you're a good
Bernsey
media digger.
was there. What?
You're a good media digger.
Okay, fine. Well, tell me if you don't want to answer that. Then tell me why, if Joe Thornton's progress was slowed down by them, what was your excuse?
My excuse? I actually same idea. I got traded.
He's got 999 career points. How many do you have?
Hey, I had the best seats in the house for 10 years. You couldn't buy my tickets. You know how much hockey I watched?
That's true. And you got paid to be there, which is a plus.
I got front receipts and got paid first class dollar for being there. Loved it. Loved the game.
All right, we got to wrap this up. And I didn't even use one picture today, so I'm going to have to use this one.
Nice.
Nick Nolte, Ken Belanger, I'm Corey Landsberg. We'll be back next week.
I'm not afraid to take a stand, take a stand.